You can have all the knowledge and materials in the whole world. You can follow all of the scope and sequences, and we have a great scope and sequence if you want to follow one from Child of the Redwoods. You can buy every single set of the golden beads, the math materials, the stamp game, the bead frame. You can buy the pink tower. Oh my gosh, you can have it all. But if you skip this very important skill, it will determine whether you are actually Montessori homeschooling or not. And that skill is
observation.
Yes.
Now, this is actually part 3 of our series on the Montessori Homeschool Blueprint, what no one tells you, but we're telling you. And if you've been watching, you'll know that observation is often mentioned, and that's because it really is the key to everything. In Montessori, we don't just start teaching, we watch first.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that, I mean, I know we say observe a lot, you know, in Montessori, but what I think a lot of people get wrong is that it's really like 10% teaching and 90% observation, at least in the beginning, maybe forever. You know, and that, and if you think about it in terms of that ratio, that is a lot of observation.
That's right.
And Montessori guides do this every single day in a Montessori classroom. Most homeschoolers kind of skip this step, honestly, because when they're first getting started, because what feels more actionable, teaching a lesson or watching your child play?
That's
and
right.
obviously the teaching feels more actionable, so that's where we put all of our focus and attention.
And it's not a homeschooler problem. This is one of the biggest lessons and hardest lessons that professional teachers have to learn as well. We have a phrase, it's called the sage on the stage.
Yeah.
And that is this idea that when you go into teaching, you're meant to be the font of all knowledge, and you have to be doing. Now, a lot of us have progressed past that. We know, like, the old stuffy idea of the lecturer standing at the front and dictating to the class is passé. That's not new. But we've simply adapted it for a different kind of genre. So I'm not going to stand at the front of the stage, but I'm going to be actively involved at every moment, telling you or directing you.
Yeah,
and
this is literally true at every single age.
Right.
I know, when you brought this up, it did bring back a big memory. Like, we think of the classic teacher who's just lecturing to students, or, you know, while the students are at their desks all arranged in little rows. That's kind of an antiquated version of what really happens in a lot of classrooms these days.
Sure.
I know that we started teaching in the early 2000s when the trend was like to break apart those rows and to start forming small groups and to do more group-centered teaching instruction. And I think I haven't been in a classroom in a long time, but I hope teachers are still moving along that same progressive pattern.
Yes.
But what has not shifted is that emphasis on the adult's involvement.
That's right.
And you're absolutely right. When I was teaching in the classroom, even though myself and my fellow teachers in our elementary school, like, we're doing much more hands-on, small group attention learning, we were still judged when we were observed by principals and vice principals and a school administration based on, like, how active we were in our actual teaching, you know. So they really, like, we were being judged based on, like, the 90% teaching, 10% watching, you know, or even like 99% teaching, 1%.
Well, I think it can even
observing.
come from within, right? Like, if we are sort of responsible people, responsible adults, we feel like we should be working, and in order to either earn that paycheck or prove our our worth, to validate our worth as a homeschooler, or
well, we have the idea
whatever.
that if we're just standing there, we're lazy. You know, the teachers that just stand there and watch are lazy. They're not actually teaching.
And if you are just standing there idly thumbing through your phone or remembering, you know, your dinner from last night and not paying attention, then I don't know if you're lazy, but you're certainly not engaged. What you want to be doing is observing, and observing actually is a lot of work. It's something that you're going to focus a lot on, and observation is super important for several reasons. Okay, one of the reasons is it tells you what your child is ready for. Like, so you're watching for signs of readiness. Another thing that you're looking for with observation, and this actually goes to the problem with a lot of education, is that it ties to what we would consider assessment, right? So we traditionally, in most schools and in learning environments, use standardized testing, like the SAT or a take-home exam or something like that, to measure knowledge. And assessments get a bad rap for this reason, because they are not very discrete. They tend to have all kinds of biases built in. They don't actually assess true understanding, right? So what is the right way to assess, the actual right way? It's through observation of your child producing certain work or engaging intellectually. We actually created a whole framework called the DEB system that we teach in our program that will kind of guide you through this. So, because we don't believe in the idea of mastery.
Yeah, we built it into our Montessori planning cards as well. So if you're at home and you're a member of our complete curriculum or unlimited plan, you already have access to these. If you're a legacy member, you don't yet have access to them. But it's DEB, and they stand for?
D is discovery, E is exploration, and B is building.
Right.
Right. And so, like I said, we're not interested in using the term mastery, because it implies a finality.
Right.
And that is not the mindset we want to have, even though for certain there are levels of mastery. But the language we use really does direct how we think. And so what we want to get our minds focused on is not mastering or completing something in terms of learning, but rather an ongoing process. Right. So observation is not only telling you where your child is currently, it's telling you where your child is going to go next. So what do the DEB stand for? D is discovery. That means it's a new concept. Your child is just starting to become aware of it.
I'm going to give you an example from our latest theme, Dandelion, which is coming out May 1st. So exciting, yes.
2 days.
Just released for our members in our community.
If you're in complete or unlimited, you already have access to Dandelion.
So this lesson inside one of the themes, a lot of people wonder, like, how do the themes, are they extra lessons outside of the foundational lessons? They're not. They're ways to introduce, discover, explore, or build upon the foundational lessons.
That's right.
Whether that's for you at the introduction stage, or whether it's like the stage where your child is starting to remember more of the concepts and starting to play around with them.
Exploration.
Or whether your child has really already understands that concept well and is now applying it to something else. Maybe, for example, they've already learned about the parts of a flower by examining a lily, which is a very classic, because the lilies are like very big in their parts, so it's very easy to see the pistil and the stamens and the pollen and all. Maybe they've already had that experience with a lily, but they've never done it with a dandelion, or a daisy or a sunflower. And so, that's why if you were to just check it off, we've already done parts of the flower and then let it go, then there's so much more
you're really
opportunity.
missing out.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so the DB system is good for that.
Yeah, because at that point, what you've really done is hopefully gotten your child to the B level, which is building. And that means that they can creatively use the concept. They could teach it to you or to another, or in your example, they can apply it to something similar but not identical. And that's actually where you're trying to go. So you might use dissecting a lily as a way to teach the parts and get them through the process. And your observation, you're looking for signs of growth throughout each of those stages. And that's how you know they're progressing from the discovery, like, oh, this is interesting to explore. Like, oh, look at all the different parts. And I can kind of put them together, to
or
building, I got it. Give me a sunflower, I bet I can find those parts too.
Right.
And when they can, then you know that they've actually achieved at that highest level. What you might normally or traditionally call mastery, but what we would prefer you call building, because they're in a state where they can use their knowledge to build. I like to use this analogy of, imagine you're hiking in the woods and you come upon a little, let's say a beautiful little pond. That's discovery. You found something new.
Yeah.
Okay, now you wander around the edges of that pond and you're mapping out everything, and there's a rock over here, and there's a little cave over here, and it's this over here. That's exploration, right? You're discovering the parameters of it, like your child discovering what are all the parts of the flower. And building is, now I know where it is and I know all the parts of this lake or this little pond. I want to build a fort. I want to build a waterfall. I want to have a little swimming hole, right? Now you're able to take your knowledge and apply it in creative ways that weren't already manifest. That's how it works with any academic subject as well. So for your flower, here's a lily, discovery. These are the parts of it, learning the parameters. Here's a sunflower. I wonder if it has the same. Okay. How do you know that your child is moving from one to the other? You could give them a test, right? You could give them a piece of paper with the parts of a flower on it and say, label it. That is a traditional way.
Sure, or
The
in
better way,
Montessori,
though-
a traditional way in Montessori would be to give your child a set of
Parts
botany cards.
Yeah.
Not parts cards.
Oh, botany cards. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, parts cards, but botany specific cards,
Yeah.
with where we can classify. But if you just stop at that, like, it's almost meaningless.
Totally.
Right. And so you really need this actively engaging observation, exploration part in order to really guide your child to that next level.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is for every single lesson in the entire Montessori curriculum, right?
Yeah, and ours just goes from ages 2 to 9, but this is true for every age learner. You, the adult, still are using this, and in fact, it's the marker of a skilled learner. Is if you've been able to internalize these steps and apply them yourself, then that's really a marker when you say a person is educated. When a person has a real thirst for learning, it's how you might define it. They've taken these steps, they've internalized them, and they apply them regularly.
Right.
That's what you're trying to develop in your own child.
So remember that observation isn't just watching.
Nope.
It is just an active part of guiding your child as the direct teaching part is. It's really all critical. The observation is super, super important. It really is the number one skill that will make or break your Montessori homeschool, and we mean it. So to help you get more comfortable with observation, there are 4 qualities that we're going to talk about today that you can really think about as you go about your day, as you're exploring different ways to observe your child through the different activities that they're doing, whether they're just sitting there playing with a dollhouse or some stuffies and pretend play, or whether they're using the knob cylinders,
Got the beads out and doing some math problem,
right. You
whatever.
can use this with any of it, but all 4 of these qualities really need to be present in order for you to be doing your job as the Montessori
These
guide.
are your responsibilities as the observer, not the child's responsibility as the learner.
Okay, you ready, friends? You're probably going to want, and I say this in our courses too, you're probably going to want to take notes on this, So if you're just listening while you're walking, make a note to come back and write these down, or get out your mobile app and just jot down these 4 qualities. We're going to give them to you here, and I am just so curious to hear your feedback about which of these things really resonate with you the most, and what happens when you make the shift to really consciously thinking about incorporating all 4 of them.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so number 1, the first one that we want you to think about is whether your observation is intentional. Are you consciously choosing to observe your child? Well, this does not mean that you have to get your little notepad out and sit down classic style, or like me,
Maria would have done.
Maria would have done back in the early 1900s. Okay, like you don't have to make this super formal. I mean, Maria Montessori really did come into some, basically, it was her classroom, but there was another teacher there. She visited the classroom regularly, but wasn't there every single day. And she was acting like a doctor, coming in very formally, sitting down, taking notes, doing her scientific research, right?
Yes.
That's not necessarily what you need to do. You can be doing this at any given moment. In fact, some of the best moments of observation are possibly going to be happening while you are just doing random activities with your child that you might not even think of as educational. But if you notice during that time that there's like a time of presence that's opening itself up, you can say to yourself, I'm going to be intentional about my observation right now. I'm going to observe my child and see what happens next. Yeah. And if you make a practice of this intentionality, it is going to give you insights. So if you've been watching your child, like we've been telling you over the last 3 weeks, we've been kind of harping on observation recently because it's so important. If you've been like, Aubrey, David, I have been observing. I'm just not seeing anything. You know, I watch my child all the time. It could be this intentionality part of it could yield you better results when you observe.
Yeah, you said something super important, which is it's not formal, it's intentional.
Right.
Right. So I think we confuse those a lot. I think we say, okay, well, now is my time to observe and I'm going to sit.
And there's nothing wrong with doing that.
No, there isn't. Except, well, I will give a caveat. I think sometimes when we become very informal about our observation, your child is always aware of what's happening. And, you know, as do kids in school or teachers in school, when we think the teacher's watching, we act differently.
That is true.
So if you want more authentic observation, then actually the formality is important to try and avoid.
Yes.
What you're wanting to do is be intentional, like focused, but not rigid, formal, obvious.
Right.
You're not distracted by loading the dishwasher, but you're also not sitting there with your notepad and writing everything down.
Yeah, you know, when I would sit there with my notepad, writing everything down, I called it journaling, and my children were often, our kids were often interested, like, what are you doing? And I'd just be like, oh, I'm just writing. And it was just modeling of writing.
Yes.
But I really tried to do it in a very casual way. So it was just, they saw me writing a lot, and I would just be sitting there at the table with my notebook, just writing, you know, with a pencil, and they would just be like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm writing. You want to write too? Here's some paper.
That's
you
right.
know, and but I never would tell them like I'm watching, you know, and so I really tried very hard not to let them know that I was so keenly intentionally focused.
Well, we had a good example of that last week, actually, in the comments, or I think it was maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, where one of our viewers said that their child has suddenly started to express an interest in writing after quite a while. And actually, we have a clip on that, the reading and writing in our YouTube, if you go there and look at our library, that took that comment. And basically what the viewer said was that the child had taken copies of the observation materials that we provided through the course, through our membership, and was writing on that. And why? I mean, it's because they are modeling what they saw.
Yeah.
So,
oh, that's right. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, if you are learning to become a better observer, one of the big benefits that you may not have thought of is your child is also learning how to do this as well.
That's
and so
right.
And whether you're just like sitting there quietly, having a present moment to yourself while your child is engaged, or whether it's like you're sitting down with some paper, you're using those observation templates, your child is likely to want to mimic you in some way.
That's fun. That's actually great. Actually, yeah. Okay, so number one is intentional. You're actually set out to focus on this task.
Right. You're not distracted.
You're not distracted. You're not doing another task. You're maybe not. Watch out. No, don't make a big show of it. Be casual or uncomfortable with it, so that the child doesn't feel like your child doesn't feel like you're watching them like a hawk. But you are actually watching them like a hawk.
Yeah. I like to say, this is a good point we make up about not being distracted. I think what we really mean is like when we're on our phones and we're just like scrolling, it's really easy for us to become completely unaware of everything that's around us. That's why texting, you know, is so tempting to like be texting while you're walking somewhere, especially super dangerous in the city to be doing this. We tell our kids this all the time, like, put your phone down when you're crossing the street. But I see adults doing it constantly. And it really is a danger because you're not really paying attention, even if you think you're paying attention. So go put your phone under your pillow or in a drawer or some special place so that you can be intentional with your observation. But that doesn't mean that you can't be doing chores.
Totally.
And so, when I say, like, don't be busy with the dishwasher and also expecting yourself to pay complete attention. If there's a task that requires your total focus, that's not a great task to engage with while you're observing. But a really good way to get your child to feel more comfortable and calm with what you're doing is to take on a hobby type of task. And maybe it's as simple as, like, so it's something that you can do almost by rote. You've done so many times. Knitting is a good one, or crochet, like something that, like, you can just, like, sit and work on, like a crafty type of thing. It could be watercoloring, it could be knitting, it could also be journaling, which is, what it was for me. I really like to write anyway, love journaling anyway, and so it's just a very common, stress-free way for me to just be sitting there. I also say, like, having a book of Maria Montessori's and just be reading, because you can have your book and you can read a little passage and then pause and, like, unobtrusively observe your child, but not, like, actively engaged in a project where you're distracted in it. Okay, so I hope that clears it up. So I'm not saying don't do your knitting while you're observing. I'm actually saying do your knitting because it's an informal way of just being present in the room. But don't be on your phone.
In short, intentional.
Yes.
You've gone there to intentionally observe. Okay. Number 2, you mentioned this, you actually brought up this word a moment ago, and that is focused. So what does that mean? It means you're watching your child closely for small signs and behaviors, right? You are maybe looking past the big, noisy, sometimes chaotic actions and trying to find the patterns or causes. So it's easy to get distracted if your child is being very big and noisy and running around, right? And you might assume, like, that just means they need a lot of big gross motor, and that could be the case.
For sure.
But you can't know that for sure until you really sit and you focus in on exactly what's happening. So they're running around. Are they running around? But what they're really doing is they're going and grabbing something from a room and then bringing it to another room. Or
that would be gross motor.
Sure. Or are they sitting there and, like, transferring? Are they banging on something that is to make a noise, right? So you're sort of looking for, I think sometimes we just can feel like it's chaotic. And what we are looking for is the patterns of intentionality.
I think often children are involved when they do seem kind of big and noisy and, like, disorganized. Sometimes, and in fact, very, very frequently, there is a purpose to their work. Like, in fact, often, like, this is a mistake opportunity for you to make is if we interrupt our children during this period where they are, like, big and moving around and obviously doing something, we might not see whatever result will come of that behavior. Now, obviously, if your child is, like, throwing the blocks, you have to intervene, okay? If your child is, like, being destructive or hurting other people or hurting, in danger of hurting themselves, I think we can all look at our children and know, like, are they in control of their bodies? And if not, good to know. Now let's take some action to help them regulate their nervous systems.
And just because they're expressing some learning moment doesn't mean that it's right for your moment. So you have to kind of, just because they want to have a big gross motor.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, that is what I'm saying. I'm saying that sometimes if it's nap time for grandma and you want to have a big gross motor moment, it may not be the right moment.
Okay, that's also a good point. But what I'm leading up to is, like, if your child is obviously being destructive or something, you have to intervene and stop that behavior and redirect them. But sometimes those big movements and that chaotic environment is actually your child very purposefully completing a creative project. And I witnessed this a lot with our children. You know, the behaviors that I thought were like random and had nothing to do with each other. And then eventually, if I just sat with it and waited long enough and watched them engaged in this immersive, focused play, then what resulted was often like an amazing creative project or the completion of a project. And this project might be something like, I think one time I remember being completely kerfluffled as to what they were doing for a good 45 minutes. And then they came up to me and they're like, "We're ready." And I was like, "Ready for what?" And they're like, "For us to have a circus show for you." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yes, we've been practicing and we've set up all the things and come look." And I went downstairs and was like, "Oh, wow." Like, we had gone to a circus a few weeks ago and then not talked about it for the next 3 weeks. And then here, like, they had come up with like their own project and they had arranged everything. And then I was just delighted as they jumped through hoops and did all these little acrobatic tricks.
I love that story.
It is, yeah.
It's a great
like
story,
it can be unexpected what happens.
And what I like about your story too is we've been talking about, I gave some examples of don't let the gross motor chaos overwhelm, but I think that's actually easier in some sense than to not let the quietude confuse you either. Sometimes we think children are bored.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes we think that we have to like entertain them.
Right, completely the opposite. Your child might just be sitting there just like with the sand in the sandbox for like a whole hour, just sitting. And you're like, they must be bored out of their minds. They're not actually doing anything with the sand. I've got to do something educational to, just show them what to do with the sand.
Yeah, but actually what you're seeing there is that Maria talks about, like, when you see the child really, that's that the 3 hour block, right? When they're really zoning in on work, they get very focused, very quiet. So what you are looking for in your child is that, and what you're going to be doing through your intentional focus time is looking for those little signs. What are you seeing them actually do when they're being quiet? It's kind of a joke, like, oh, they're being quiet, there must be mischief happening. Right? I mean, how many times have we all thought that, like, oh, the kids are too quiet, there's something happening. And there is always something happening, and it's not usually something bad. It just means they're really engrossed in their work. And this is a great time to go and intentionally observe and be looking very closely at exactly what they're doing. And that will give you clues as to what they're ready for, or showing you clues as to their level of success with the skill.
That's right. So you're intentional in that you are going to observe, you're focused, and you're not being distracted by other things. You also need to be quiet, and quiet is the third quality of good observation. So a lot of traditional teachers, especially if you've been raised in a traditional educational environment, you might have the idea of the teacher who's always talking, teacher, and if you are actually quiet, you're not doing your job. We talked about a little bit about that at the very beginning. This is kind of part of it. We have trained ourselves to believe that we need to have a stream of consciousness verbalization throughout everything that our child is doing. We're actually taught like that. There's just like there's just a media push for like, we've got to increase children's vocabulary, and what's wrong? Parents aren't talking to them enough. It always comes down to like, it's always the fault of the parents, right? Or for not talking enough, for not doing something enough. And this is one of the things that I was concerned about as a stay-at-home mom of 2 little kids during the day. I was constantly thinking to myself, am I talking too much? Am I not talking enough? I've got to have the right balance. They've got to have the vocabulary. And so I should, all the research is saying you should talk to your children, talk to your babies constantly, talk to your toddlers constantly. And it's true. Babies and toddlers and little children, like they need, their vocabulary is going to be based on yours. if you're not engaging with them in communication and you're not giving them the vocabulary words to describe their world like we do in Montessori, then yeah, they're not going to learn them. But if you are constantly talking in their ear, they can't concentrate.
No.
And so as a Montessorian, as a Montessori guide, you have to train yourself to be comfortable in the quiet. And that's hard for a lot of people.
It is. And this is excuse me. This is especially true, I think, when they're in that first stage of development. Because I think a lot of times when we give lessons to our children who are, let's say, 3 or 4, it's my habit as well. You want to talk through the activity with them. That is not the way you do it. When they're little, it's really almost silent. You're really just modeling the action. So that quietude that we're talking about is something that is part of your teaching approach. It's also a part of that specific part of the teaching approach, which we call observation, right? So you are quietly focusing in on what's happening. You're not trying to redirect them. You're seeing where things go, unless it's causing a problem like we talked about before.
Right.
But if at all possible, you're letting things play out as they do, without commenting, without redirecting, without trying to teach, remembering. The learning is happening in here in your child. It's not happening because of something you're doing specifically. Like, other than creating the environment, giving them a loving environment, giving them a good diet of academic and emotional things to grapple with, the learning happens in here, right? Not from whatever you're saying. It has to be from the processing. And when we are constantly yammering, it blocks that. It becomes just a lot of noise. So being quiet is better for them, and it's for the learning, and it's better for you for the observation.
Yeah. I have to say, some of us are just prone to yammering more than others. We could talk about ADHD, but I think it happens, with a variety of personalities. Some of us are just more verbal and more
some of us
prone
talk
to-
out loud while we're thinking, or we are, right? I mean,
Yeah, or interrupt each other. David and I are both big talkers, and so I will just tell you, this is something that you can train yourself to do. And it probably will feel uncomfortable for most of you. We live in a verbal society, like we're encouraged to communicate with each other. That was the whole problem with the lockdowns, was we were encouraged not to communicate with each other, and it's just not human-like to want to do that. We want to be social and we want to bond. And yes, it's okay to talk to your child, but when you are observing and you're intentional and you're focused, this is not the time to engage your child in a conversation about something or to teach vocabulary. This is a time for you to be quiet. And yes, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel like you're being lazy, or you're you're like not educating your kid. It's gonna feel weird like that. And it may even feel, if you're the kind of person who wants to constantly be listening to noise, not naming anybody for like having the earbuds in all the time, but like if that's you, like constantly needing to listen to something, then the silence is going to feel a little scary. But it is something that you can train your mind to be more aligned with, especially if you're doing it for your child, which you are. And it will also have unexpected benefits for you as well. Because, this is just mindfulness, friends. This is a kind of mindful meditation. So if you're familiar with mindful meditation, just being present in the moment, that is what we're trying to do here. And that brings us to the fourth point, which is also actually part of mindful meditation, which a lot of people don't know about. That is like opening your mind to be curious about what's happening to your child and taking your ego out of it.
Yeah, you're not looking for an outcome that's predetermined.
Right.
You're watching what your child is doing and following your child to see where they want to go. when we start from a set of assumptions or a desired outcome, we're going to be looking for those particular behaviors. And when we don't see them, we're going to think, I failed, they failed, something's not working. That's not healthy or even accurate. You want to start with that curious, open-minded spirit and see what's happening. And this is why you have to have those other components too. You have to be intentional. You have to be focused. You have to be quiet. And through that, you'll allow yourself to see where things are going.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about you talked about like as a spiritual practice, it is true. There's so much in common between spiritual practices and learning. They're super tied together. It's also true that the observation techniques that we're teaching you here, these 4, are exactly the same qualities you want to see in your child during good learning. They are being intentional, they're really hyper-focused in on something, they're carefully observing and watching, and they're curious.
They're able to quiet their minds.
Yeah, so the same qualities that are a marker of a good, engaging learning moment for your child are the same qualities that you're wanting to emulate if you want to do good observation. And again, when you're doing that observation, you're looking for not just where they are, but how they're progressing. And then you're using that to sort of design an environment that helps them to the next step. That's where you intervene, right? So your actions do the talking, so to speak. You're seeing what's happening with your child through these 4, using these processes, and then you're saying, you know what, I'm going to try that movable alphabet again. Let's see what happens. They weren't interested, when I tried it last month. Let's try it again, because what I'm seeing now is a lot of playing with language, or they're doing a lot of pretend reading, or I'm seeing these signs of curiosity or readiness, or I saw them go dig out the tiles and try and use them. And because I was watching closely, I realized they weren't trying to make a little house. They were actually trying to spell words.
Yes. So go out in the world and try these 4 things and see if they help you to get closer to that Montessori guide spirit that we're helping to coax you towards in every single episode of the Power Hour. Well, of course, we are all unique individuals, and that means that some observation techniques, even though those 4 qualities are still going to be present, sometimes some techniques work better for some people than others.
Yeah, some of us are better at being quiet than others. I'm not particularly good at quietude, you might be able to tell. But for sure, your personality will direct the kind of homeschooler you are, and it's great, actually. The key is not to conform yourself to the one specific thing. It's to figure out what your strengths are, who you are as a person, your true self, and then find your homeschool rhythm and routine that best matches to that. And if you do that, you're going to have a lot more fun. You're going to be a lot more successful. You're going to stick with the homeschooling routine. It's just a win-win all around. It's know thyself, the old saying.
It is, yes. So this is actually important because we've just released a new quiz on our website. It's called the What Kind of Homeschooler Are You quiz, or the Find Your Homeschooling Superpower quiz, whatever we want to call it. We have identified 4 different types of homeschoolers that are out there in the world, and I'll give you a hint. We're all kind of a little part of every single
That's right.
kind, but I have found that some of us align more with the kind of explorer, adventure-seeking type. Some of us are more homebodies. Some of us find it easier to be more flexible with the lesson planning and the schedules. And some of us feel, feel weird and untethered without like an idea of what's happening and the ability to like dig into some research about
now people have been having a lot of fun with this quiz. We've gotten a lot of comments and feedback. You can take it yourself for free at childoftheredwoods.com/quiz, and we'd love to know if you think it hits the mark or not. I think most people are pretty pleased with the outcome.
Somebody messaged me the other day and was like, I don't know how you did it, but like that is exactly me. So I'm very curious please write me back and let me know what kind of homeschooler you are if you take the quiz.
Yep.
It's childoftheredwoods.com/quiz.
Now, there are 4 kinds of homeschoolers that we have identified in our quiz. Again, you will be a blend for sure if you take the test more than once. You might get 2 different answers. That's because no one is just one kind of thing.
Right.
The goal of the quiz is to kind of help you get a better sense of who you are and then to kind of embrace that. And that is also true when it comes to embracing your personality type as an observer. So
Okay.
we have our 4 kinds, and we've been thinking about specific techniques that you might use if you're this kind. So if you haven't taken the quiz yet, head over there and do it, and then you can come back and watch this part or take some notes, and then you'll find out. And if you have taken the quiz, get ready to find out what kind of observation techniques you might find most compelling.
Okay, let's talk about adventure seekers
That's
first.
the first kind of personality.
All right.
So this is the person who's always looking for a new adventure. This is the adventure seeker. Neither one of us. Are you an adventure seeker? I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I guess I am.
Yeah, you're very much an adventure seeker.
That's true.
Yeah, when we were homeschooling our little kids, like I used to complain about it almost. I'm such a homebody that every single weekend you were like, let's go here, let's take a trip to this place, let's go explore this. We were just like constantly exploring. And then on Monday you would go back to the office and I'd be like, oh my gosh, so much laundry to do. I had to like take Monday as like my weekend day to try and get it together because we did so much on the weekends.
Fair enough.
Yes, so no, total adventure seeker. But if you're an adventure seeker, and I actually know several real life homeschoolers that, you know, I just absolutely love, totally different from my type of personality. These are the kind of homeschoolers that are always looking for field trips, you know, places to go, events, you know, play groups. Like they are probably, you know, if you aren't one, you probably know one.
Yeah.
Because they're like constantly, we're just not just talking about extroverts. We're talking about people who just really want to be constantly having new experiences in the world. This is what really gives them that dopamine rush. Is
Yes.
like going to a new museum or seeing a new experience. Or, oh my gosh, we toured the Jelly Belly factory. That's not something I would ever think of to do. But one of my homeschool friends was like, I'm organizing a tour of the Jelly Belly factory.
It's very close to San Francisco.
We're all going to go. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, we made the trip down there. There are a lot of people here who are like constantly wanting to sign up for all the camping trips in the summer. Like if you're an adventure seeker, you probably know it. I recommend, because you might not be spending that much time at home because you're constantly out and about wanting to do new things, that you do a lot of your observing while your child is in the world. You can look for these little hidden moments when your child's engaging. So they're at the Jelly Belly factory, you're wandering through, your child just like stops and becomes immersed in focus, watching the gears turn as the little jelly beans go down the track. That's your moment to observe. You know, when your child is showing that focus or that interest, and maybe they turn to you and they're like, oh, look, this connects to this, and that makes the wheel turn, and then the worker comes in, picks up the box, you know, and puts it into another machine.
Yeah.
And like, not all children are going to be interested in all educational or
We're going to get the same thing out of
right?
that same event.
No, but when you see that your child is having a moment, no matter where you are, that is your opportunity to observe their interaction with their environment.
Yep.
You know,
So you're going to play Spot the Spark if you're out in the world. Okay. Now the second kind of homeschooler is the free spirit. I think this is definitely something that you would feel simpatico with.
Simpatico.
You're a free spirit and nature lover. So you're kind of, what is this person? This person is sort of ready to go wherever the wind blows. So what kinds of things might you do? So one observation.
Sort of, yeah. Like,
Well, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's kind of a difference between adventuring and just being a free spirit in mindset.
Oh, for sure.
You know,
the
so
adventurer, we're looking to create something for whatever reason. And like whatever it is that motivates us, we're wanting something new. I think for the free spirit, in my mind, they're taking the world as it comes. And if that requires them to go to the Jelly Belly factory, they'll do it whether they want to or not.
I don't know about that. Maybe. That might be, that's personal experience, I can tell.
I enjoyed it.
I'm sure you did. Yeah, I've been a couple times, I think.
I did take you a few times.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely went with the homeschool group as well. Yeah. All right, so yeah, that must be why I've been several times to that same Jelly Belly factory. So no, free spirits find it really easy to let the plans go out the window when the moment arises. So if that's you, you're already there, and it doesn't really matter whether you're at home, not following your lesson plans, or whether you're out on a nature walk, not following your lesson plans. Great activity for you when you're observing is if you are going for that walk outside, you have to be outside, maybe try playing the listening game. Like listening for what your child is saying, listening for what's around you, watching your child and observing the things that capture your child's attention, you know, that are out and about in the world. So just paying more attention really to like your ears and what you're hearing is going on as well, just like one sense.
Yeah. Okay, so the third kind we call the old soul. So this is the cozy type, I think.
It's also me.
It is. You're the free spirit / old soul. And
Yes.
so an old soul, you know, I think of stuffies and tea parties. It's a real kind of snuggly, cozy kind of approach. So this type, an observation technique we might suggest is the one sentence reflection at the end of the day. So after the day is done, it's taking time to think back on what your child did or what you and your child did together and jotting it down. It could be just one moment you observed or something new that you saw, maybe something new that you saw by playing the Spot the Spark or listening walk or something else, or just something that happened and it moves you. And making a note of that will help kind of put it into your mind and lead you to reflection. I think it's a good technique for this type. You love to journal, and I think your old soul personality speaks to that.
Yeah, my recommendation, if you are an old soul and you feel like you're going to lean into the journaling type of observation, get yourself a pen that you love, like maybe a set of colored pens, lean into like that nostalgic spirit, do some doodling on your notebook as well, and like pick a pretty journal. You know, I really love passing by those fancy notebook stores. Sometimes you see things on sale.
Papyrus.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I know. Just like pretty notebooks, whatever makes you feel good. So don't feel like you have to stick with just the printout observation templates, although those are a great place to start. Like really lean into what makes you feel most romantic and that nostalgic kind of old schooly type of side of you.
Now this, of course, doesn't mean that we adventure seekers would not like to journal. Well, it actually...
Maybe the old soul part of you also likes to journal.
Unfortunately, I
So-
don't really have an old soul part. What I have is this fourth type, which is the scholar. So we're the type who love to crack open a good book as often as possible. So those are definitely my two types, adventure
Really?
seeker and and scholar.
Yes, but I mean, why else would you be obsessed with watching Buster Keaton if there were like a piece of you that was like old soul?
Well, we could talk about Buster Keaton if you want. But part of it for me is, the film history. Yeah. So he's also awesome. And if you've never shown your children classic silent comedies, you should do it. They are lots of fun. Our kids, I'm a big Buster Keaton fan. He's my favorite. Charlie Chaplin, of course. And especially youngsters, they love it. It's a great way to kind of get them interested in film history and classic comedy
It's
and
not
things
just
like that.
It's a great way to help your child develop some focus and concentration, because if you are going to expose them to TV media, what they're probably exposed to first is like the Peppa Pig style, where it's like one scene, next scene, next scene, next scene is just constantly flipping
Music,
through.
dialogue, color,
Right.
color.
But when you're watching a silent film, and our children loved it, it really requires you to focus for longer periods on stretches where the characters are giving lots of different emotions and that lots of action is happening, but not a whole lot is being explained. It's all like visual interpretation. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, there's the interstitials, but even if your child can't read those, they're designed to be, they created them to be understood.
Okay, we'll have a whole episode just to silent film. So the fourth is the scholar. And you'll know if you're a scholar, and there is also a part of me that's scholar, if you really love opening up Maria Montessori's books and like studying them for real. Like, not everyone loves that, friends. But if that kind of research, or like you're the kind of person who's like, I want to know everything about my child's developmental stage at 18 months, like that is very, very scholarly in personality. So if you're the kind of person who is like a scholar by nature and you really love the research and you love reading, like some people I know, all the scientific studies that have ever been written about a certain medication or, particular kind of, I don't know, any of that, you know who you are. Here's what you're going to do. You are going to take on the role of Maria Montessori, and you are going to set up an invitation for your child to do an activity without expectation, and you're just going to sit and watch what happens. Now, we've already talked to you about the good qualities of observation, so obviously you're not going to set it up in front of your child and then hover over them while they try and engage with the activity with you watching. No. You're going to play it cool. You're going to do your laundry. You're going to do your knitting. You're just going to like present something. There it is. And then no lesson. You're just going to see what happens. Yeah. And Maria Montessori did this with every single material that is a classic Montessori material.
Yeah, that's right.
The only instruction that she gave the teacher, the guide in her classroom to do was just to like model the basics of it. So if it's the knob cylinders, like take the cylinders out, put them back in. Right? Like that's it. Right? No fancy lesson. Just model what it does once and then put it back on the shelf and then see what happens. And so it's the see what happens part that's the interesting part to you. So if you're a scholar, you're going to just set out a material, and I would even say, like, even if it's a material you already have on the shelf, this is a great technique for you. Get out that pink tower, but instead of like it sitting where it usually sits, put it on a rug and just display it on a basket instead, or on a rug, or vertical, like horizontal instead of vertical. A new presentation, just like here it is on a rug, and then it's just like left there for the morning. Like, oh, this is a pink tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing, and it's also nothing on your ego. But then you're just gonna see what happens, and you'll make notes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, if you would like to figure out which of these techniques will work best for you, the answer is all of them. They're all great techniques. But if you would like to match them to your personality type, head over to our website, childoftheredwoods.com/quiz, and take the quiz, and then come back and take your results and figure out which of these techniques we might suggest. And give it a shot. We'd love to know how it matches.
When you take the quiz, you'll get results that will give you some insight into how you can use your primary homeschool superpower to your biggest advantage when teaching your child.
That's right. All right. Well, we are about out of time.
You can't stop without Bunny.
Oh, we cannot. We cannot stop without Bunny.
But we do have to go very soon.
Oh, well, all right. I'll just come by and say hello to everybody who's out there. I know we have some fans. Hi.
I know everybody appreciates that, Mr. Bunny.
Yeah. I want you to tell me a joke today.
Oh. I can never remember any, Mr. Bunny. Let's see. I can never remember any, Mr. Bunny. You cannot do this to me live.
What? You can't think of a joke?
I cannot.
Well, good news. I've got one at the ready.
Oh my goodness. And you just made me worry.
Oh, boy.
Well, Mr. Bunny, I would love to hear your joke.
Okay.
And next time I'm happy to prepare one for you ahead of time.
Yeah, guess what? Do you know which month is the Army's favorite?
What month is the Army's favorite?
Yeah, it's March.
Because they march.
Yeah, that's right. See,
I get it.
jokes don't have to be good. They just have to be fun. Yay!
That is true. Thank you, Mr.
Wait.
Bunny.
Hold on. Wait. I have a joke from the audience.
You do?
Whoa.
Oh my goodness. Did Theo give us a joke?
How many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh?
How many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh?
Tentacles.
Tentacles?
Yeah, that's a good one. Very good. Thank you, Theo.
That is really good. Thank you so much, Theo.
That was very good, Theo. All right.
Bye.
That was a good one. Thank you so much. I'm sure Mr. Bunny had a good time as well. That's a very good joke. I like that one a lot. Thank you, Theo. All right. If you'd like to know more about our work, you can head over to our website, childoftheredwoods.com. Remember about our free quiz. It's a lot of fun. And we will see you in 2 weeks. We won't have a show next week, but we will have one in 2 weeks where we're going to wrap up our series on Montessori Roadmap.
All right. Thanks a lot, friends. See you next time.
Bye.